Welcome to Association Chat, a podcast devoted to talking about all things associations, nonprofits, and the future for building communities. In a world where there's an association for everything, that gives us a lot to talk about. So let's get started with your host, KiKi L'Italien. Thank you to Mike at Podcasting for Associations for the production of this podcast. What happens when I talk with two people who happen to know a little something about crisis communications, and what kind of tips do they have for making sure that a crisis doesn't happen in the first place? You'll find out when I interview Adele Cehrs and Chip Massey on this episode of Association Chat. All right. Hi, everyone. We are going live with Association Chat. And for those of you who have not been doing the live video chats for a little while, especially on Crowdcast, welcome. And hey, welcome back. I mean, it's so exciting to have the chat option. We're doing something a little bit different. I decided to surprise everybody with this interview this week because Adele, who's been a friend of mine for a long time, has this awesome, amazing masterclass coming up with Chip Massey, who's also here. And I had the opportunity to get them both on the phone, both on Crowdcast, and do this interview. And I wanted to do it so that we could find out more about this thing because Adele, oh my gosh.
Yeah, cool.
Sounds amazing. So let me go ahead. For those of you who are not up to speed on who's Adele, who's Chip, what's going on. So Adele Cehrs, she is heralded as a crisis communications expert by the Wall Street Journal. Adele has worked with high-profile clients like Vice President Joe Biden, the CEO of Lockheed Martin, Marilyn Houston, owner of the Washington Monumental Sports, Ted Leonis. How do you say his name?
It's Leonis.
Mm-hmm. I always said Leonis. I didn't realize that S was there.
Yep.
She's spoken to the United Nations, and her talk was broadcasted on United Nations television and translated into 8 languages. She's the author of the book Spike, Your Brand, ROI, How to Maximize Results, which I have actually on my bookshelf behind me.
Thank you.
And then we have Chip Massey. Chip is a former FBI hostage negotiator and special agent. He is a partner at the When and How agency and helps companies like Goldman Sachs and MetLife. Who are they? What? He has worked with the CIA to track down spies, to lead high profile, criminal cases and counterterrorism investigations. He's worked extensively in crisis situations, international kidnappings, and fugitive apprehensions. Oh my gosh. So a lot of us in the association space are just like, that's us every day. No, we're not. We're not like that. But I'm super excited to talk with you because you have something really special coming up. You have this masterclass that's happening in New York. And when's that happening again?
It is November 4th. So it's coming up. It's coming up
soon. And I keep seeing the promotions that are coming up for it. And I have to say, I'm extremely intrigued because it's all about how to read people and get what you want, basically. And who doesn't want to know that? I mean, and so I wanted to start out by just asking, what is this thing all about? And let's just start there. Talk to me about this thing. How did it come together? What is this? What can people expect when they go?
Hey, Chip, do you want to start?
Okay. So, all right. Thank you so much, KiKi, for having us on. And also, I'm a big fan. I originally found you through searching for Seth Godin, videos, and your podcast came up. I said, "Oh, this is really cool." And then Adele said, "Hey, want you to go to this celebration for a 10-year anniversary for Association Chat." I'm like, great. And I had no idea it was you. So that's a lot of fun. That's that connection.
I have to say, I remember that night really well. Obviously, it was such a great night to celebrate. And, but I remember meeting you, and I'd heard a little bit about you. And there was this little piece of me that's like, is he reading me now? Like, how is this working? Like, what's going on?
I feel like that every day. I feel like that every day. It's a little weird. Yeah.
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 But no, Adele and I met at a entrepreneurial dinner, and she just started telling me about what she did. And it sounded fascinating to me. And she said, I think, there'd be a lot of really cool stuff that we could do together. So that just kind of started the conversation. We've been working together ever since.
Well, I think that that's a really interesting mix, because from the work that, that Adele's done, and it's so funny because I crossed paths with her just like a couple of weeks ago, and I saw her on the road, and she was starting to pass by, and we pull up next to each other, and our windows go down, and I'm like, "What's going on?" She's like, "I'm heading to a crisis in DC," and she can't ever give me the details, but she's like, somebody was shot, I mean,
stabbed. Yeah.
And he heads off, and I'm like going to Alta or wherever I'm headed. I have no idea. And I'm like, that is so funny, because you might as well have the siren on top of her car. But what an interesting mix to have someone who gets called in to deal with when a crisis happens on a like, how do we communicate about this when we're reaching out to the public? And then someone who's been dealing with it when you're in the thick of it and you're trying to basically get to a place where people are safe and get to a place where, emotions have sort of leveled. And I guess you guys have so many similarities in that way. It's really intriguing to me to think about what this class is going to look like and what you're teaching people. It's good stuff.
Yeah. And I think the way we like to position it is what Chip did was the one-to-one. And, like one-to-one, like, how do I calm down this one person? How do I make sure this active shooter doesn't get worse? Or how do I, take this hostage taker and make them calm again? Whereas I'm dealing with one-to-many. How do I make sure that people aren't upset about this one story? How do I make sure that the CEO is positioned right? And so mine is one-to-many and his is one-to-one. And so I've learned a ton from Chip, which is really refreshing, having been in communications for the past 2 decades, like getting to be a learner again is sort of fun. And then I think I'm doing the same thing for Chip, because
absolutely, yeah.
I'm translating his stuff into business. And so it's creating this really interesting, intersection of both of our disciplines that I think people are going to get a lot out of. They're going to get that, how do you get that one-to-one connection really fast? How do you de-escalate a situation really quickly? But then also, how do you communicate your message effectively in a business context? So I think, the melding of our two disciplines sort of do that for people.
Well, why is this important for, and this is, I'm speaking to the association chat audience, but why is this important for all of us to know right now?
Chip, I'm going to throw that to you.
Sure. So I think, one of the things that we were, recently talking about was how divisive, our world is right now. And, that seems to be mirrored in not only in the political context, but also in business communications as well, dealing with boards and dealing with different, layers of companies and what, responsibilities and things just get out of hand a lot of the times. And what I really feel is a really strong takeaway from this is just a breather of how do we listen to each other and how do we best communicate, what we're trying to get across in a way that's not hostile, when it doesn't have to be divisive, right?
What's kind of interesting about that, KiKi, Chip and I have gotten called in since we started working together to do a couple of different things for the pretty famous firm in New York called IDEO. They came up with the whole concept of design thinking. So they called us in a few times as experts. And one of the things Chip was teaching them, and I was obviously adding to it, was this idea of forensic listening.
Forensic listening. Wait, I have to write this down.
Okay, it's really smart. These are some of the takeaways we will have for people, right? This idea of forensic listening. And as Chip was saying, our worlds are so divided right now, right? Everything is so divisive. We're not listening to each other really well. If you think about it, social media is an echo chamber and you keep hearing the same people's voices over and over again. And, this idea of forensic listening is something that Chip did, as a hostage negotiator and as a special agent in the FBI. And I'll have him describe it to you. But when we were in this meeting at IDEO, we were trying to teach them principles about forensic listening. And the one executive, his response back to Chip was like, this seems kind of soft. I don't know how I'm going to sell my executive on this idea of forensic listening. Like, oh, okay. Like, why is that actually going to work? And Chip, I'll let you kind of take it from there.
Yeah. So the concept here is really forensic listening. We're talking about the combining of two different things. It's active listening skills along with empathy. And, empathy is a buzzword these days, I know. But the fact that when you combine these two concepts together, these two skill sets, amazing things can happen, and they're extremely powerful. And the case in point is that when you can connect with somebody on a level that shows, I am trying to understand my best about where you are right now. I'm trying to get what it is you're going through. I may not agree with what you've done or what you're doing, or how you're getting there, but I just want you to know that I understand. I'm trying to understand more, and I'm going to stay with it. So getting back to Adele's point in that meeting, when we were describing this, the one guy said, I think that's, it's a really soft skill. I'm not sure that's going to sell. So my response was this: well, I can use that soft skill, and I can go to somebody who's got a gun to somebody's head, have them put the gun down and walk out with their hands up. So right. I
think you made your point with that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I guess it works. Right. I guess it works. Yeah.
Wow. Not so soft in that. So it's a soft skill that has a great impact. Let's say that. Right.
Exactly. We use it. I often say is that the FBI uses empathy and active listening, not because we're, warm and fuzzy. That's not our goal. Our goal is to be deadly effective. And that's what it does. It takes somebody down from a 10 to a 2 in terms of where their mind is. And that's really the point is when people are in, let's say, they're frustrated in a meeting, or they're very upset, their job's on the line, they're going to lose a client, or the boss is yelling at them. What happens to us is that it triggers that whole survival mode thinking, that primitive brain, and we get caught in that loop. And what happens is that we pull off the analytical brain, our highly evolved brain, and it becomes just very primitive. And so we react that way. We're angry. We're pulling back. We don't reach out for help. We don't, and it kills creativity, KiKi. It just absolutely kills it. And so while that was good in maybe prehistoric days when we're facing a saber-toothed tiger, it is horrible in the boardroom, right? It is horrible when dealing with your boss.
If you're not feeling safe and you're not feeling heard, then you're not going to come forward with these ideas that are maybe a little bit different or risky, or basically anything that leads to innovation. So,
yeah. And I think that's why it's important, right? I mean, I think this is just one of the skills we're going to teach, but also how to have critical conversations, how to have better conversations with anybody on your team, right? And how to do that in such a way that you're building and maintaining trust.
Oh my gosh.
Right. So, I mean, that's huge for anyone. We also, we'd really be remiss to say, and I wish Jeff were on this call. Yeah. We're going to have Jeff Hurt.
I love Jeff Hurt. And I was going to ask you about that. Like, what role is Jeff playing? Because he's known for every learning design and basically being able to structure things so that adults can learn better and more effectively. So what's he doing with this?
Yeah, so he's going to be talking about the conversation quotient. He's going to be talking about the neuroscience of persuasion. He is actually helping us design this whole event so it is super effective. So people walk away with, right? I mean, the fact that we have
he's actually helping to design the event. You guys, this is going to be so good.
It is super cool. And actually, one of Jeff's calling cards is this idea that you can't just, go to a masterclass like this and expect to get everything that day. It's about follow-up learning. So Chip, maybe you can talk about that we have this, like, it comes with the package, which we think is like super affordable. It's $199 for a day. We feed you. It's like a VIP dinner. Like, it's an amazing price. And then also, just for this, because this is our first event, we're going to throw in 90 days of follow-up content so that we reinforce everything that you learned in the class. In addition, the way we got Jeff involved was we have these really cool interactive video scenarios that we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And we're tapping into experts. And we find that, when you're in a difficult situation, and I've been doing crisis communications for a long time, you get advice from a lot of different people when you're having the crisis. And a lot of times it's hard as a leader or even a person who's handling it from a communication standpoint, or really anybody in the company, to figure out who is the person I should listen to, right? Who is the foremost expert? And so what we're going to do is, with each video scenario that's like 60 to 90 seconds long, so it's super fast paced. There's like things on corporate espionage. There's things on, like, if someone's lying in the office and, like, how do you tell? And you're going to then hear from these experts, and then you're going to decide which is the expert you're going to listen to. And then we're going to have a whole conversation around that. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. It's
that
so cool.
sounds so cool. So it's it's like you're testing people while they're there. They're applying and testing themselves and applying what they've learned.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much, because how many times do we go to something and we learn, you learn the idea. I'm taking these notes: forensic listening, it's active listening plus empathy, it's deadly effective and all of this stuff. But am I applying it? Am I applying that? Do I have a chance to apply that right away? And what happens to my little Post-it note when tomorrow comes? And I'm like, now what was that they said? And how would I, be able to dissect this situation based on what I learned? And you're saying people are going to have the chance to apply this and learn these things along the way.
Totally. Yeah. And I mean, one thing that I think is a really cool thing, and is something I started thinking about after, Chip and I talked, is something he calls the unstated narrative. So Chip, maybe you can talk about what that is.
Sure. So that's another concept that, Adele helped me think through as I was talking about the skill sets. And so that's the point, is that everybody's got a recording running through their head, right? Everybody has something that's on their mind that they're thinking about, but it may not be what they're talking about. So it's right. So, like, for example, if I'm dealing with a hostage taker, I've got to immediately, I've got to establish some type of trust level with them. I've got to establish rapport, and studies show I have between 10 to 15 seconds for them to make up their mind whether I'm somebody that they'll continue to talk to.
See, how do you, can I break in? Can I interrupt? Because I love this I love this trust topic, and I'm fascinated by it. And, when I was talking about building communities and stuff recently, I was talking about how you can fast track trust. And one of the common things I get pushback on is people don't like to hear that. They're like, trust takes time and you build trust over time. And I'm like, yes. And sometimes there are things you can do to fast track trust. And whenever I get pushback on that, I'm like, well, what about grifters? What about people who con artists? They figure out how to do it really fast to get you to trust them and part with your money. And how do they do that? It can't be that we're just all foolish and making dumb choices. They're tapping into the ways that we decide to trust them somehow. And how are they doing that?
Right.
So, can you share maybe one or two of the ways that?
Can I just say something about KiKi's thing, and then I'll let Chip go.
Yeah.
I will be an active listener, I promise. But one of the things is, every technique that we're going to teach people in this masterclass, and all the stuff that Chip's going to talk to you about. We had some person put a comment on one of our promotions, and they were like, "This is premeditated manipulation," and it's like, no, it's not. But any of these techniques can be used for ill, right? I mean, they can.
Yeah,
but,
yeah. But I think, that's exactly right. There's this really great book by Maria Konnikova that I love called The Confidence Game. Mm-hmm. And she talks about how con artists choose their mark and things like that. And it's not teaching people to be con artists. It's teaching people how to actually figure out how can you do this, to do things like bond a community very quickly when you need to, or to diffuse a situation. There are times or to allow your teenage daughter or son to, what's that way that you can connect better quickly so that you can get to the good stuff or the work that remains, right?
Right.
So,
yeah.
But anyway, so tell me.
Yeah. Sure. So I'll tell you what, we do in the FBI, and that is we teach things that have to do with the voice. And this is something that Adele brought out to me so early on, and I hadn't thought about it. But most of Haas's negotiations occur over a telephone. So what you're doing is you're either speaking to that person over a phone or through a door, right? If they're a barricaded subject and they've got somebody in there, or they're in a bank, we've got a phone connection. So the only connect that they have to me is my voice. So I have to be very careful with my pitch, tone, my cadence, and I have to do something that I call reaching out with a empathetic voice, so that they know that I'm doing everything that I can to focus in on them. And that's the other side of that, KiKi, is that you already know this, but it just bears being said, is that we fail to listen so much. It truly is a lost art. But beyond that, if you can show people, actually demonstrate to them that you're paying attention, that you're listening. So that can be done through repeating, like the last three things somebody says.
Can you tell the story about the last three words? I love that story.
Okay, right. So I was teaching a seminar at a business accelerator in the city, and
New York City, right?
Yeah. I'm sorry. That's right. I forget where I am.
The city.
Right.
For those of us from New York.
And one of the participants was in the back, young guy. And he was saying, yeah, I know about that technique. I've used that before. It doesn't work. I was like, well, explain to me, how doesn't it work? Because obviously I have a different opinion. So he goes, well, for instance, I was talking to my girlfriend, and we were just sitting down, and, I was looking at my phone, and she was going on and on about her day. And so I decided, I'm going to use that last three words technique. And he said, so she comes and she says, I had a horrible day today. I said, you had a horrible day today? Yeah, my boss just came out of the office, just started yelling at me for no reason. For no reason? Yeah. And it was so embarrassing. All my colleagues turned around and they just looked at me. He goes, now, mind you, he said this last part, and he said, and it was I was on my phone, and I was like, and they looked at you. And she turned to me and she said, wait a minute. You're just saying the last two things I'm saying. You're not even really listening now. And he said, so it doesn't work. I said, I said, yeah, it does. You were just being an idiot, Yeah. Right. So if we fail to be, and I know it's overused again, authentic, if we're not there, if we're not present, if we're not doing our part, right, we're failing. Yeah. And the technique is going to fall flat. In fact, it can really have the opposite effect.
Right. So, right. Because it's like you're caught. It's like you're caught.
Yeah.
And so that's when people are you're manipulated. You think that you can just fool me into believing you. Oh, I love it. I love it. So
but how do you make the connection? So did we get into that yet, Chip? Did you answer my question?
The connection.
Can you tell the story about your hostage taker and how you made an immediate connection with them?
Yeah.
Do you remember the Bronx?
Oh, right. So this is
I know his stories.
Those are my stories, and I'm like, oh. So, right, we were going out to do an early morning arrest. There was a violent fugitive with gang connections out. It was in the Bronx, and so we're out there, dark 100, and we have about 26 people on this arrest team. They've got air support, ambulance, the whole nine. It's a circus when this happens. So we go knock the door, and he's not there. So this is bad. Mm-hmm. And all we have after doing a neighborhood canvas is that we have a phone number for the guy. So mind you, all these people around. So they decide the decision is made to make the call. Now, mind you, the FBI does not like to call up fugitives and say, hey, We just stopped by your house. You're not here.
Where are you coming back? Or
yeah, we have some things. So because it's a low response rate for that one. So any rate, so who do they give the phone to? Well, they give the phone to the hostage negotiator, right? And the guy says to me, gives me the phone, goes, "Hey, Chip, you're a good BSer. You call him." I'm like, first of all, that's not what I do. I'm not a BSer, okay? And I'm mad now, right? I just want to go into the instruction about we're listening. We're all about this training.
Just to be clear.
Whatever, right? They're not hearing it. Just do it. So, all right. So I make the call. Line opens up. And I said, call the guy, Joe. "Hey, Joe, my name is Chip. I'm from the FBI, and I'm here to help." I get nothing, right? It's an empty call. So, but I got to act like the guy's still on the phone. So what I do, KiKi, in that moment is I'm trying to put myself in his position. So the next words I'm going to say, I know are going to be important because he's going to make a decision. And so I say to him,
"Oh, wait, Chip, ask KiKi what she would say."
This is good. KiKi, let me ask you. All right. I'm going to deputize you right now.
Adele, shut up.
As a special agent hostage negotiator.
You don't need help. Okay. All right.
Now, so you've done that. You just told him, you said, "Hi, my name is KiKi. I'm from the FBI and I'm here to help." And you get nothing. What is your next line going to be to try to bring this guy in? Take your time.
So I have this show called Association Chat, and we'd really like to hear your story. Yeah. No. I don't know. I don't know. I think, okay, so I'm in the moment and I'm on the phone and maybe there's breathing on there and I don't know if but this is crazy, right? I don't know. Like, I would be like, God, this is crazy. I don't know. Just because it is, right? That's a crazy, the guy's
I wonder if any of the viewers have any ideas on what they might say.
Yeah, actually,
the person on the other line.
Anyone who's watching, only the people who are watching on Crowdcast can actually type in so that we can see it. If you're watching on YouTube right now, sorry. But for the folks on Crowdcast, if you want to type in what you would say, what would you say at this moment? And I know you're here because you said hi. So
everybody's like, your fingers. Yeah, it's kind of an unfair thing because it's a pressurized situation, right? And if you've got they don't have the training in it. Robin, very good.
Robin says, "How are you feeling right now?"
Robin, very good. And that probably would have been better than what I said, actually.
What'd you say? Are you hungry? You want some food? Wouldn't Popeyes be good right now? I need to go to McDonald's. Yeah.
Not bad things. So what I said is, "How bad does your life suck right now, Joe?" And I just let it hang.
Oh, God.
Now, here's why I said that.
Yeah.
And I wasn't being flippant. I said it pretty much just like I said right there. What I was doing was I was trying to connect with his world that he was experiencing, right?
Yeah.
So like, for example, when we call up somebody who's going through a horrible mess, right, in life, their own personal crisis storm, we don't call them and say, "Hey, how's it going?" Right? If we're the friends, we're going to call and say, "I'm so sorry. Is
this
there
sucks
anything
right
I can
now."
do?"
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to connect with him, was that I understood what it was like to be a fugitive. I understood that he had to look over his shoulder every single day and every single second, that he couldn't go to an ATM machine because we had that. He couldn't call up his mom because we had the phones. He couldn't get a regular job because of his status. He didn't even know where to lay his head at night because he didn't know who he could trust. So that's his state. That's his normal. And it's horrible. So he's also worried about his safety. That's a big concern for fugitives because they know at any point in time they can get pulled over or stopped in the street if they match up a description, and it could be a real problem really fast. So I say to him that, and I wait. And then I hear, "What's your name again?" So I know I've got a person on the line, and it's likely my guy. But I get nothing after that. So I continue. And what I do here, KiKi, and that's what we try to describe with people that are in positions of like oppositional situations. You've got a disgruntled board member, or you've got a client that's just, you're just not able to meet, So what I did is I'm trying to establish an emotional connect to this guy. So I'm looking down the street and I see there's a pizza place, right? We're in the Bronx. And I'm thinking, okay. So I say to him, Joe, I'm looking at this pizza place and I'm wondering, if you got what kind of slices you would get from here.
Because if you're from New York,
it did go to food.
If you're from New York, everybody has an opinion. Like if you're from the South, you have an opinion on like barbecue or whatever. But if you're from New York, you have a very particular way at which you take your pizza. So like it's a thing, right?
Right. So I said, are you a cheese or a sauce kind of ratio guy? What do you like? Or what's the crust? And nothing. And then I'm saying, and I'm looking at the telephone lines here. And I'm seeing all the sneakers that are wrapped around that. And I know that means something here.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if your sneakers are up there, Joe. And what event did that mark for you?
Wow.
Still nothing.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
Now, time is ticking. So I say to him, because I know if there's a strong likelihood he's going to drop this call. So now I'm going to say, listen, I'm going to be here for the next 40 minutes. And I want you to know that when you step off that subway today, I'm going to shake your hand and I'm going to guarantee your safety and I'm going to walk you through this process through the whole day. I said, so I'll be here. Nothing. And then the phone goes, done.
Yeah.
So I get a call. Team leader says, we just got a call from the front office. They're going to cut our team by half and they want to see you, Massey, when this is over. Like, okay, great. So I'm already thinking I'm being transferred to Alaska. So about 20 minutes later, man steps off the subway, puts out his hand and goes, my name's Joe. Let's get this over with. So
wow.
If it works in that context, if it works with somebody that's under that kind of duress and you can connect and use the skill set with anybody.
This
right?
is so good. Oh my gosh. This is so good. So yeah, because I'm thinking about those tense situations, whether it is, these arguments within boards,
right.
the boardroom, when things get really heated, people get really emotional. It's staff meetings. There's all kinds of situations that come up internally. And then if you add the outside perspective of like, if you have something where you have to be concerned about what people in the public are thinking, I can imagine that trying to understand the best way to navigate these difficult conversations, that having some of these tools is incredibly not just important and not just desired, but almost, it's necessary. You need as much of this as you can possibly get.
You do. It's about going from a me-centric mindset to a we-centric mindset, right? It's it's really important. And I think association folks understand that already, but how do we get better at that in our everyday conversations?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think, we're all about, the association community is all about the we, but how do you make that one-on-one connection better? How do you understand your emotions on a daily basis? And it's getting somebody to renew a membership, getting a board member to come on, to come to your way of thinking. It's about, shifting ideals within your association. It can be really challenging. So learning to connect with people on a deeper level through listening, by understanding that unstated narrative that's in their head, by figuring out what are their challenging situations and how do you get past them in really, really practical ways. That's what this event's going to be all about.
Well, so we've talked about some of the solutions and some of the things that you're going to be teaching people. Where do you see a lot of people going wrong? Where are people, missing the boat in their normal conversations?
I think it goes back to not really listening or caring what the other person is saying and more about waiting for them to take a breath so that you can jump in. That's all a part of it. It is putting yourself back and bringing them to the forefront. And when you do that, amazing things happen with that interaction. It's like one of the things I describe when I teach a seminar is, do you remember the last fight you had with your significant other? The bad one, right? The one where everything is being thrown out and it's like, and it gets really escalated. And after a while, you don't remember even what this started from. And all you're thinking about.
Have you been looking in my house?
Right? That's everybody's house. That's everybody. And while you're, there, you're thinking, I'm going to wait for them to, tell me when you're done. You hear that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're waiting, because you've got a zinger to throw at them. And what you're thinking is, I'm going to destroy this person, because that's our survival mode. That's our unevolved brain talking. But what we're going to teach people is how to get back to that evolved brain. And so one of the ways you do that is you keep the higher purpose in mind when you're having that tough conversation with somebody. So that instead of reacting to what they say, you're now responding. You're taking in what they say, and your next thing, that they might have said very insulting to you, might have been tragically insulting, hurtful. But instead of reacting in the same type of manner, you say, listen, I think I'm missing something here. I want to understand, right?
Oh my gosh.
Understand.
Okay,
yes,
wait a second.
It is very weird to have conversations with Chip, because you're always like, are you analyzing me right now? Are you doing this weird thing? What's this bonding report?
He has to get this. You have to get this all the time, Chip. You have to get this all
so it's not intimidating at all to have a disagreement with him about anything business related. Yeah.
So there is something that happened. I might be stepping into just a whole bunch of mess that I shouldn't be stepping into right now by even bringing this up, but can't help it. I want to. So I thought about this conversation, and I thought about your crisis communications articles that you write, Adele, for. Is that for the Wall Street Journal or for, I can't keep up, or Inc?
Wall Street Journal.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, with the Ellen and George Bush thing, George W. Bush, huge controversy online and on social about whether or not she should be friends or have conversations. Basically, should she even talk with somebody who blah, 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 right? And so I'm going to go ahead and put my bias out there, because people probably already know or guess, but I think that any conversation you should always have the conversation with whomever, because whether you agree or disagree, you can't get anywhere unless you talk. So whatever. But that said, and I didn't even warn you, and I'm sorry, but I wanted to tap into your expertise for both of you from the perspective of what you're teaching. Difficult conversations, talking with people where you have to be very aware of public perception and things like that. How would you have what is your take on that story?
So I kind of love it. I think Ellen handled it really well. And she came out and was like, I can speak to anyone and not necessarily agree with all his political beliefs, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to have a conversation with them. And I just think that she showed people the importance of being a good listener, of actually just sitting down and listen to different perspectives. You don't have to agree with everyone on their opinions, but it does mean you have to be civil. And I think we're not having enough civil discourse right now. And that's why we're getting into the mess we are politically. I think, and I said this to Chip, I think in Trump era marketing, right, which is kind of where we are, we have to be, keenly aware of how we're coming across, of the different things that can impact our organizations and impact them quickly. And, we don't necessarily have to take sides, but we do have to listen. And, associations are full of people who have different perspectives. And I get calls from associations sometimes, and they're like, oh my gosh, we've got this like crazy member, and they're spouting off all of this stuff about Trump, and what do we do and how to react to them. And associations who respond really well are the ones who do what Ellen did. And it was like, hey, we have all different kinds of perspectives. We want to hear from everyone. You give people an opportunity to share their voice, and you do it respectfully. And I think if you can do that as a business, if you do that as an association, I think that's what people want from a community. You do that, KiKi. You do that incredibly well with associations.
Right.
Thank you. I'll take it. And I'll also take this question from Carla Howard, who says, hi, Carla, who says, do you have advice for the situation where others aren't being civil? She says, I totally agree. Attitude is everything. And there is so much not kind dialogue going on these days. So
Right.
What do you have to say?
Yeah, and that's getting back to Adele's point, and again, what you preach here, KiKi, is it's all about that. It is, there's actually a formula we teach in this, and it's being used in schools now. It's called the idea. It's I feel when you because. Right. Mm-hmm. And so if somebody is coming at you with some very negative things, whatever the subject matter basis is, and it's just it's personal, and you can say, and they're like shouting, maybe it's just getting, it's starting to simmer over. So you could say, I feel frustrated when you yell at me because I can't help.
Wow.
And, these things are so effective when we can do that to somebody. That is, we can engage them on a level that says, I'm not trying to be the problem. What I'm trying to do is connect with you. That whole thing of, the brain, and this is what Jeff is going to go to it brilliantly. He's already said in a lot of these articles, is that just as Adele said about the collaboration, when we start, instead of going for us versus them, and we look at it from a we perspective, whenever we do that, and that could be, the person that, across from you in the boardroom, or, wherever there's the friction is, whenever you can get the dialogue back to we, it makes the brain lights up in the reward center, and it loves that. There's a safety that the brain searches for all the time. And that's one of the things that we can do so quickly and rapidly by telling somebody, I'm here with you, and I'm trying to understand you, and I want us so that we can work this together. Make them part of this, part of the solution, but truly do that, and it can change the game entirely.
It's also about making the other person feeling in control, right? Like, I think that's a big aspect of it, right? It's about making them feel like they have a choice. I think that you are listening, that you are actively involved in finding a solution for them. And but it's tough, right? I mean, the internet makes it really hard. I mean, I think sometimes people are allowed to say things on the internet that would in person get them punched in the mouth. But they're just allowed to say these things, and there's not a lot you can do. And but there are ways at which you can respond, and you can be proactive. I do see some associations, and this does worry me a bit. I see some associations getting bullied by members, and they have these social media policies and approaches that don't necessarily help. And so, modernizing your approach, understanding that there are going to be some negative people out there. Don't write your policies so that everybody's going to be nice, because that's not likely going to happen now. Write your policies so you can deal with some of the difficulties that come along. And I think, if associations do that and proactively do that, they can handle really difficult situations a bit better.
It is interesting that there is so much avoidance, which I think ends up creating so bigger problems than what you started with, because, there's this situation that keeps bubbling up, and almost every organization, every business I can think of, you run into this sort of thing where things are they're not going well in whatever area, and they start to bubble up. And a lot of times, especially now, because people are so worried about saying the wrong thing, or so worried about if I approach it, if I address it, then I don't know what's going to happen, and it's going to escalate, and I won't be able, this will be bad for me. So they avoid it. And by avoiding it, it doesn't go away, it doesn't go away. And I tell this story a lot, because what you're talking about, I think, is what happens when you have the nerve to actually hear somebody out, to host the conversation, the difficult conversation, to address the problem, because that's a hurdle. But it's like, I had this job. It was the only job that I almost got fired from when I was in college, and I was a checkout girl, and at the grocery store. And
me too. I was a checkout girl also.
I was, I bet you were much more effective than I was. I almost got fired. But I had regulars, and people would line up. There'd be all these different cashiers who were open, and I'd have a line, and they'd say, "You can go over here." And they're like, "No, we're waiting for KiKi," And the reason why was like my item, they had a list by the check-in, check-out place, and there was this list of your times, right? Of your items per minute. And I had the lowest items per minute because when people were going through, I was talking to them, and finding out more about them. And so I got gifts. People would come by. It was awesome. Except I almost got fired. But what the biggest thing I learned from that was on like day one, this manager came over and told me, look, you're going to have a lot of people who come in, and they're going to be complaining about everything. They're going to complain about broken eggs, and that they've had them and they dropped them. They're going to want this and that, and you're going to think it's ridiculous. And he said, 90% of the time, if you just let them talk and vent and yell and scream, then they won't even care about getting the refund. They just want somebody to listen to them.
Boom.
And I was like, okay. And what I learned was that, yes, that's absolutely correct. 90%, if not 99% of the time, that's exactly what happened. And I mostly didn't have to worry about it if I just let people talk. And so I think that is part of the hurdle, is just getting people to allow themselves to have the conversation. I saw that Ellen story and I was like, oh, come on. We have to be able to talk to each other. Yeah. It's crazy.
I have so like, I'm sure a lot of the people who listen to Association Chat are avid travelers, right? Like all the folks, because we do a ton of business traveling for conferences. And, Chip and I were talking about the ways at which our stuff worked together. And I was like, okay, any advice for like, let's say, I'm having a really bad experience on an airline and my flight gets canceled. Like, how do I convince the person behind the counter to like rebook my ticket? I'm getting some like really practical tidbits. Chip, can you talk about the strategy you had recommended? Because I think this is so applicable and really, really cool.
And it's what you guys both do naturally. It's the whole thing is that you make it about them and not about you. And it's not about you until they decide it is. So what I mean by that, so like in the case for the airline, you would go and say, hey, really slow day today, right? Because it's obviously crazy. They've got people like, no complaints today, right? So you're saying, I wonder how often does this happen to you? You just engage at the level of humanness that you do, right? You can come up with all kinds of creative ways of doing that. Funny things to do, right? To lighten them at the same time. You keep at that until they decide they're going to ask you. So what is it that you're here for? And then once they do that, what they're doing then is showing you, you've put in, you've given enough deposits here. So I'm willing to engage with you. You seem to be like a decent human being. Let me see if I can help a decent human being out. So that's it. It's putting their agenda first, listening, being there. It's like you said, people are so desperate to be heard, to be understood, to be validated. Adele says this all the time. When we validate people, it can produce such a change in their countenance and the way they look at things and in their day-to-day life.
So the YouTube people just saw me grin really, really big because, and I guess hello from Algeria on YouTube. Yes. But so Sherry says, we're so excited to spend the day at your all-day workshop on the 7th. Yay.
It's on the 4th. It's on the 4th.
It's on the 4th.
Sherry, make sure you book your ticket on the 4th.
Sherry, make sure you're there. If you're there on the 7th,
I was like, wait, not the 7th. What is that?
On the 4th. Okay. So, this sounds so good. So if there's one thing that you want people to take away from this conversation, by the way, there is a code for people to register and be able to get a little bit of a discount, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So if you're on Crowdcast, you can actually use this code, and it's only good until the next association chat on Tuesday.
Yep.
So it's a very limited time, not going to be around after that. So you want to use this, you want to use it now. If you're in Crowdcast right now, you can actually click on the call to action button. It will open, and that's the little green button at the bottom, and it will take you to the website for the event. And you'll be able to enter the code KiKi Chat 2019. That'd be ASSNCHAT 2019. All one word, no spaces. So, and what do they get with that? What's the discount with that?
I want to say that's like a really, really good discount. I want to say that's maybe 50% off. It could be a 2 for 1.
You know what? Mm-hmm. Test it. Find out.
Go find out. Go crazy people. Go register. Make my weekend, please.
Go check it out. Be curious.
It is going to be really cool. It's a really, because it's our first event, we're trying to make it super affordable. New York, as you guys know, is an expensive city to do an event. So,
but it's for a very limited time. So guys, if you're listening to this later, if you're listening to it over the weekend, you've only got until Tuesday to get this in and use that code. Okay.
But what we're excited about, KiKi, is seats are selling fast, and we're getting responses from people in all parts of the world, which is really, really interesting. Our Facebook marketing has been super effective. I think we got something like 40,000 views on one of our videos.
Your videos have been really interesting. I've been watching those, and there's these little tidbits. Do you guys have any plans for after the event, if you're going to continue putting out these little short videos? Because they're really great.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, that's the plan.
Yeah.
Definitely. Maybe some online courses. One of the things we're trying to do is, this is really a way to kick off, Chip and I going on the speaking circuit. So if there are associations on here or meeting planners on here who want to book us for speaking engagements, yay. You can't make it to the event. Call me.
Yep. I have to say you would be getting, that's a powerful, 1-2 punch there. You've got I am so excited to hear more about the masterclass. I want to try to be there, and I'm looking into it myself, but just not sure yet. But
yeah. Awesome. Yeah. I just think people are going to get so much out of it. And I think they're going to walk away learning how to manage their emotions more effectively, being prepared in situations where, it sounds like I know everybody who is on Association Chat knows me as a crisis communicator, but I want to get across, this is not about crisis communications. There's some level of that, but it's more about everyday conversations, everyday business situations, how you respond, how you become the calmest person in the room, and how you can project a level of confidence in the worst, most difficult situations. And if you can do that, you're going to be a person other people want to follow.
So you're saying you're going to give them the de-escalation techniques so that they don't need to call you, that you're rushing in to with your siren on your car to do crisis communications.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They're going to walk away with the techniques to understand the neuroscience of conversations and get much better at it. And who doesn't need to get better at that?
Yeah, I think we all do,
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. And I know it was kind of odd time, but hey, it's a Friday. It's a fall day. It's great.
Weekend, baby.
Yeah, I know. I'm so excited. So thanks to everyone who has watched with us on Crowdcast, to those of you who are watching on YouTube, and to those of you who are listening and watching later. If you can possibly get to New York and be a part of this program, I think you would be very wise to do so. And I genuinely see you November 4th. Hope you can make it, KiKi. Me too. I genuinely hope that I can be there and to learn from both of you, to learn from Jeff Hurt and all of the people in the room, because from what I understand, the people who have signed up are pretty impressive as well. So.
We have some experts like Josh Steimel. We have Mark Levy, who helped Simon Sinek come up with the the concept of why. We have just some.
You have Sherry. You have Sherry.
Right? And Sherry and Kevin. I mean, they're going to be.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be an incredible event. So thank you, everyone.
All
for your
right.
support.
Well, everyone, keep asking questions to learn every day. As Joseph Campbell once said, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. Have a great weekend, everyone. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Association Chat. If you like it, please subscribe, or better yet, tell a friend. You can join the Association Chat Book Club or support Association Chat by visiting Association Chat's Patreon site. You can also find more information about live events, private communities, special projects, and more on associationchat.com. See you next time. Hey, Association Chat is in its 10th year and independently owned and produced by me, KiKi L'Italien, and a very small crew of freelancers and volunteers. We appreciate our sponsors like you wouldn't believe. So I want to give a special thanks to all of our sponsors. Today, that includes Boulder, Event Waves, and Amplified Growth. Thanks to all of you. And if you want to find out more about sponsorship, then go to associationchat.com or email me, kiki@amplifiedgrowth.net, and we'll be happy to talk with you. All right. Thanks.